Have you ever stopped to think about what you're actually eating when you choose fish? Because not everything is as healthy as it seems. Today, we're going to find out which fish are better for you and, most importantly, if tuna is really as good as we think. Let's start with the ocean. It's huge, full of life, but sadly, it's also full of things that don't belong there. Every day, we dump tons of trash into the sea, plastic, chemicals, all sorts of stuff. And even though we don't see it, all of this ends up affecting the animals living in the ocean, and of course, the ones we eat. Think about microplastics. These are tiny particles, almost invisible, but they're everywhere. These microplastics are eaten by smaller fish, and then those fish are eaten by bigger fish like tuna. It's a chain. But not all fish are equally problematic. Some are actually pretty safe to eat. For example, sardines or mackerel are great options that I highly recommend. These fish don't live as long, so they don't have as much time to accumulate all that junk in their bodies. Plus, they're packed with omega-3 fatty acids, which are great for your heart, brain, and pretty much everything. Did you know that sardines are so nutritious that they've even been called a superfood? And they're not just healthy, but also sustainable because there are plenty of them, and they're not as affected by overfishing. So, it's a win-win. Oh, and by the way, if you're enjoying this content and want to learn more about making healthier choices, don't forget to give this video a like and subscribe to the channel. It really helps me a lot to keep creating content for you. Now, let's talk about the bigger fish, like tuna. These fish, being at the top of the food chain, eat smaller fish that have already absorbed all those microplastics and contaminants. The result? The longer they live, the more toxins they accumulate in their bodies. This process is called bioaccumulation, and it's a pretty big concern when it comes to larger fish. Tuna, in particular, is one of the most problematic. You might think, well, if it's so popular, it must be good, right? But actually, because tuna live for so long, they accumulate a lot of mercury. This heavy metal is toxic to our bodies, and it's not something we can get rid of easily. In fact, consuming too much mercury can affect your brain and nervous system, and it's especially dangerous for pregnant women and children. In some countries, it's even recommended to limit tuna consumption significantly, precisely because of the mercury levels it can contain. Now, I'm not saying you can never eat tuna again. It all depends on the amount and frequency. The issue is that, since tuna is so trendy and consumed so often, we often don't think about the risks. And it's not just mercury. There are also microplastics and other contaminants that can impact your health in the long term without you even noticing. And if that wasn't enough, we also need to talk about overfishing. Tuna is in such high demand that its populations are in serious decline. And it's not just about quantity, it's about balance. If we keep fishing at the current rate, we could severely damage marine ecosystems. There are even tuna species that are on the verge of extinction, and that's not just a problem for the oceans, but for us too. But it's not all bad news. There are alternatives. You can choose smaller, less contaminated fish like sardines or mackerel. There are also plant-based options that mimic the taste of fish but come with no risk of mercury or contaminants. More and more people are discovering these alternatives, and it's not hard to find products that are both tasty and much cleaner. So, next time you think about eating fish, remember, what you choose to put on your plate doesn't just affect your health, it affects the planet. Making more conscious choices is something we can all do. Take care of what you eat, and you'll be taking care of both your body and the oceans.